Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So as promised yesterday, I told you guys that I would film my birth story, or Isla's birth story, and she's sleeping. She can stay sleeping. That's the key. I think she can. Okay. Good. I'm not going to touch the bouncy chair. I was going to turn it on, but I don't think she wants it on. Okay, she's content. There's a smile. Oh my gosh. Okay. She's so cute. I miss her. She's right there. Okay, so we're going to talk about Isla's birth story today. I've got coffee. I feel like this should be a chit-chat, get ready with me, but I'll do that for something else, like my postpartum journey or something like that. So anyway, Isla's birth story. So during my week 38 of pregnancy, I was diagnosed with gestational hypertension. I went into the hospital for something completely unrelated. It was like kind of contraction related, water related, just different things. I went in and it was really late at night. It was like 10:30 when we went in at night. And I had a high blood pressure reading, a few of them at 34 weeks. And they'd kind of been abnormal here and there, but mostly they'd been really, really good. And then at 38 weeks, while we were in the hospital, my blood pressure kind of skyrocketed. And for 3 hours, they monitored my blood pressure and it stayed really high. And we were talking about induction, like right at 38 weeks. And my husband and I really thought we were going to be preparing for a baby that night. The doctor came in and said, you have gestational hypertension. If your blood pressure doesn't come down, like, I'm going to recommend an induction because you're considered term. And we don't want this to get worse. We don't want it to lead to preeclampsia, eclampsia, HELLP syndrome, those things. And so she said, and it was our midwife that was talking to us. And so she was like, I'm going to do some blood work and labs and see if that comes back normal. And then we're going to keep monitoring your blood pressure. So they did that. All my labs, everything came back normal, really good. I did not have preeclampsia. I didn't have any other warning signs of anything like that. So it was just my blood pressure. And then the minute she came in, like 2 minutes before she came in with my lab results, we got a normal blood pressure reading. And so they were really comfortable sending us home, not inducing us, which we were very thankful for because we were very ready. We were like, if there's no reason not to be induced and there's risk to the baby, there's risk to me, we're definitely doing it. We're going to do the induction for sure. So we were sitting there preparing for a baby. Like, we're like, wait a minute, are we having a baby? We didn't bring the hospital bags. Like, what is happening? So she comes back in and I have a normal blood pressure reading and she says, normally for these kinds of things, we don't get a normal blood pressure reading, like it stays high. So I'm comfortable sending you home. I was set to see my midwife 2 days from then. And she said, but I called and scheduled you an appointment. We had talked about this for tomorrow morning to see your midwife. And she said, that is why we're going to send you home. Like, we're comfortable with you doing that, but go to that appointment tomorrow, talk to Karen, figure out a plan, chat about all this, blah, blah. So I now have this new diagnosis of gestational hypertension, which you get when you have 2 high blood pressure readings with that are 4 hours apart, something like that. So mine technically was like 34 weeks and 38 weeks, but it still fit the diagnosis. So I went in to see Karen the next morning, which was a Wednesday. So this was the Wednesday before I was 39 weeks. So let me get dates because I feel like that's gonna help you guys. That helps me. I'd be like, what was the date? December 2nd, I was 38 weeks. So on that Tuesday, December 4th, was when we were in the hospital. Wednesday, we were going to be induced. Wednesday, December 5th, was when I went to see Karen in the morning. I got a normal blood pressure reading that morning, which was really, really, really good. But they still wanted to do a non-stress test, and baby wasn't moving a whole lot, which was a first for that. And so I had to do it for over an hour. Then I had to do an ultrasound, biophysical something ultrasound. So they do a full ultrasound, which was kind of cool because I got to see my baby again, and they estimated she was going to be 7 pounds 1 ounce, which if you saw my last video, that's exactly what she was, which was kind of crazy. So I did that Wednesday. I did the ultrasound, the non-stress test, saw my midwife, got normal blood pressure reading, and we decided there that I needed to be monitored daily for my blood pressure at this point. So I had another appointment with her the next morning, or the next afternoon. So I did all this stuff, went to the hospital, did the ultrasound, non-stress test in the midwife's office, went home, went to sleep, woke up the next day, and then I went to the clinic to see my midwife again. They did more labs, a repeat of labs to make sure nothing had changed, urine analysis, blood pressure, non-stress test again, everything was really normal. So they were feeling really, really, really good that it was kind of a soft diagnosis of gestational hypertension. But when you have gestational hypertension, no matter whether it's a soft diagnosis or a hard diagnosis, they want to induce you by 39 weeks or at 39 weeks, like by then, because it reduces the risk of it turning into preeclampsia, eclampsia, or HELLP syndrome and getting worse. And that can lead to really serious complications. I've had friends that have had preeclampsia, and HELLP, and I did not want to get into any kind of emergency situation, especially because the baby was looking really healthy, fully like grown. I was fully at term, and so my midwife, our care team decided that the best thing that needed to have happen was that I needed to be induced the morning of Sunday, December 9th at 8 a.m. was my scheduled induction date. So we decided that on Thursday. So my family, as you guys know, is from West Virginia. I don't know if you know that, but they are from West Virginia. Tim's family is here. So that was kind of interesting because it gave us this date that our baby was definitely going to come, which was kind of weird. It was kind of wild. We didn't really expect to have that. You don't really expect to have that. You expect to just not know when the baby's coming, and then just your water breaks or you go into labor or something happens and you end up at the hospital and you have the baby, right? You don't know when it's coming. That's kind of the point of it. But now we knew that the baby was coming, like we were going to be induced Sunday, December 9th. So it was either going to be Sunday or Monday that we were going to have this baby. And that was kind of crazy. So my family was able to book travel plans. My parents were going to get here Sunday at noon, and then my sisters were going to come the next weekend. So, so that was kind of wild. I also forgot to mention that on Sunday, December 2nd, I lost my mucus plug. And that's kind of a big deal, kind of not. Your mucus plug regenerates, but it's essentially what kind of keeps infection out of the uterus, out of your cervix. And so when it drops, it means when your mucus plug comes out, it means that labor could be near. It could be days, could be hours, it could still be weeks because it will just regenerate, but it's a good sign that your body is progressing. And so that happened Sunday, and when we ended up in the hospital Tuesday when I was diagnosed with gestational hypertension, they did a cervical exam and I was 2 centimeters dilated and I lost my mucus plug, and so I was a very favorable candidate for an induction already, because my Bishop score, which if you don't know what that is, you guys can Google it. That would be a whole kind of separate video, but your Bishop score is basically how ready you are for like a natural vaginal delivery, if it's like favorable or not. And a lot of times they're assigned scores for induction specifically, like whether it's favorable, you're a favorable candidate for an induction and vaginal delivery or not. Because induction can mean a higher chance of C-section. Not really high, but just a little bit higher than normal. So anyway, I had lost my mucus plug. I was already a favorable candidate for induction because I think my Bishop score was a 7 or 8. So I was right on the cusp of being like a really good candidate. You want over 8 Bishop score to be a really good candidate for induction with a vaginal delivery. So I did not want to do a C-section. She was perfectly positioned. She'd been at a station +1 for like a month. And so we knew she was perfectly positioned for a vaginal delivery, and that's really what we wanted to have happen. So if possible. So okay, all that being said, Thursday we make the decision with our midwife to schedule the induction for Sunday, December 9th at 8 a.m. So my parents booked their flights, they're coming here, and we are just kind of like enjoying time till baby comes. We are kind of hoping that she comes, well, we're really hoping that she comes on her own so that they don't have to be induced, but at the same time, we kind of feel like Sunday is the day, whether she comes with induction or on her own. We just feel like it was going to happen Saturday or Sunday. I had that feeling that she was going to come by Sunday all week. Since I lost my mucus plug, I was like, Tim, I just know she's going to come. I really know she's going to come on her own. I really feel it. And so, what happened was Saturday night, we get all the way to Saturday, and I'm having contractions, but they're not getting any worse, and you know, it's not active labor, it's all just early labor stuff. And then Saturday we went to see a movie. We saw Creed, the second Creed, and we got home and we were just like hanging out, and I went to the bathroom and I felt like a gush, and it didn't feel like it was pee. And so I thought that my water had broken, but it didn't continue to leak out, and so my water definitely hadn't broken. So my water isn't broken Saturday night, so we go to sleep Saturday night and wake up. I wake up at 5 o'clock to pee, and we're supposed to leave the house at like 7. So my alarm was set for like 6:15 so I could get up and meditate, and we could take the dogs out and just kind of have a relaxing morning at home. And then we were going to leave at 7, drop George at daycare, and head to the hospital to get there by 8. Our hospital was only like 20 minutes away, but we were going to get there a little early. So I wake up at 5 a.m. to go pee, and I go back to the couch because I couldn't get in and out of bed at this time. I was like too big. It was too hard with how much I had to pee during the night. So I was sleeping on the couch the last week. And I go back and I lay on the couch on my blanket, and it is like a balloon pops inside me, and water just comes gushing out. So I hop up from the couch and I ran to the tile, and I just stood there, and I'm not kidding you, it was like 4 cups of fluid. It felt like a gallon of fluid was just like pouring out of me. It was insane. I was like, okay, I get the difference between what happened last night and what happened now. Like, this is definitely my water breaking. So I'm laughing hysterically because Tim and I had thought the day before that my water was broken. So I'm cackling, laughing, and it's 5 a.m. and Tim's asleep. I said, Tim, you have to come out here. And he says he remembers thinking, if Toby is doing something cute, I'm gonna kill her for waking me up. And he came out, and I'm just like, there's just a puddle on the floor, and I'm just standing there like, this is happening right now. And he was like, holy crap. And I was like, yeah, my water just broke. But I'm gonna take a shower, like, I'm fine. I'm gonna take a shower, I'm gonna get ready. You can't take a bath when your water breaks, but you can take a shower. So I wanted to take a shower, I wanted to wash my hair, I wanted to do that. And I was like, you go back to sleep for like another hour, and then I'll wake you up and we can take the dogs out. We'll take George to daycare and go to the hospital. So I get in the shower. I'm getting in the shower, and this is like literally 5 minutes after my water has broken. I'm in the shower. I'm like washing my hair. I'm doing my thing, and I start to feel contractions. And I was like, oh, I guess, you know, maybe because my water broke, you know, and it's like progressing a little bit more. Not thinking that it would happen like 5 minutes later. 10 minutes go by, and I was like, these contractions are getting really bad. And I'm like still in the shower, but I'm like really having to like lean over and like breathe kind of through them, and they're definitely getting worse. And so I am like, I better kind of hurry up. So I hurry up in the shower, I get out, I start drying my hair, and they get worse and worse. And 20 minutes in, I call the nurse station, which I had the number to the nurse station. My midwife had given it to me because I had to call to make sure they had the right staffing for my induction in the morning. So I called, and I just said I was supposed to call this before my induction to make sure staffing was okay, but my water just broke. So we're going to be coming in anyway. I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. And I wasn't going to call my midwife, but the nurse station was like, you should call your midwife and let her know what's going on. So I call my midwife. I'm on the phone with my midwife. This is now like 30 minutes after my water is broken. And while we're on the phone for about 8 minutes, I have 3 contractions and I cannot talk. Like, she has to tell me to breathe and like breathe through them. And she's like talking to me, and Tim's still asleep. And I like can't talk, and every contraction there's just like more water gushing from me because your amniotic fluid just keeps replenishing itself, and just like it just keeps coming out. So I've got towels, I'm like sitting on towels, I'm at my dining room table, and it's just like, and I'm like moaning and I'm like groaning, and I'm just like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. I'm like doubled over in pain. And she's like, Abby, these are too intense, you need to come in now. And I was like, okay. So I was like, Tim, wake up. We're not waiting until 7. I'm calling your brother. He's going to come take George to daycare. And by the time Tim got out of bed, took the dogs out and fed them, which was probably 10 minutes or less, I was having contractions so intense that I could not stand up. And if I was standing, I had to be bent over, holding onto something, and I was like borderline screaming, and it was like a possession. It was like something. I could breathe through it. Like, they were okay enough that I could breathe through it. Like, I could still breathe and remember to breathe through it, but they were the most painful thing I've ever felt in my entire life. And I was just like, we have to go to the hospital. But then Tim, I was still sitting at the table. I could not get up and like walk to go get my clothes because the contractions were every 1.5 to 2 minutes. That's how fast they were coming. And every single one was getting worse and worse and worse. And so Tim's trying to like scramble around, find everything that we need. The hospital bags, everything was in the car, right? Because our induction was planned for 8 a.m. So we're 3 hours shy of our induction date, induction time when my water breaks, which is in itself just crazy that she decided to come on her own, and made us so happy that she decided to do that, which was great. But these contractions were no freaking joke. So sitting at the dining room table, Tim's like bringing me clothes, but I'm gushing fluid. And so I'm like putting on the clothes, but I'm putting towels between my legs in my pants, and like stuffing my pants full of towels because we have this like car ride ahead of us, 30 minutes long, and sounds like the worst thing I could possibly do at that moment, like this car ride. And Tim is like, all right, what else do you need? What else do you need? Blah, blah. So I'm like, I don't know. I can't, like, we have to go now. And he's like, I know, let's go. Like, I'm ready to go. You have to get up and go. And I was like, I can't move. Like, I was like, I felt paralyzed in my chair because they were happening so fast and they were so intense. And I just like, I couldn't talk. I couldn't hardly breathe. And I was just so focused. And I was so focused on just like getting through the pain. So finally we get in the car. I lean my seat back a little bit and I'm just like squirming and I'm just like so uncomfortable. And I've got towels between my legs and we're driving there. And I don't even know like what's happening. I'm just like, babe, we're having a baby. And it's like, I can't even like I thought that like this would be like, we're having a baby, it's so exciting, blah, blah, blah. I was like, get me to the hospital. Like there was one point where he was literally driving like 5 over the speed limit, and I was like, faster. And I am like a speed limit like crazy person with driving. And I was like, you need to get me there faster. Like I need to get there now, because I didn't know, I knew I was already 2 centimeters and I didn't know what this was doing down there, but I was 100% sure after my like birth plan, which you guys saw that video probably, but I was kind of planning on natural delivery. With what was happening then, depending on how many centimeters I was when I got to the hospital, if I was under 5, I was absolutely getting epidural. I had already decided that in my head. This was the most pain that I'd ever experienced in my entire life. It did feel like a menstrual cramp, but I was having back labor, front labor. I could feel it down my legs. It was literally everywhere. Like this pain was like taking over my entire body, and it really did feel a little bit like a possession, every single contraction. And people say that like it helps because you get breaks, but I was not getting breaks. Like I couldn't look forward to the breaks because the breaks weren't even good. Like I would get like maybe 60 seconds, but they were coming so fast that I could hardly breathe. And in between the contractions, I was almost crying because I was in so much pain that like I couldn't, it was like the breaks were when I could process it, and I knew I didn't need to process, I just needed to get through it. But when you're in it, it's all hard, it's all happening at one time. Anyway, I'm giving you guys a really detailed look into this, but we get to the hospital, and Tim's parking the car. He drops me at the emergency room entrance because that's where we had to go because the front entrance wasn't open. There's a sweet man in there that takes me upstairs. Tim's like parking the car and he follows me up, and I get up there and I go to the nurse's station who had been there. They had seen me, like I knew all the nurses, like I'd see them a bunch of times, and I had made them Christmas cookies, and I had just finished them the night before. And so I'm walking up to the nurse's station, they're like, this is your information, right? And they're holding it up, and I was like, that's me. And I said, have you guys ever seen the movie What to Expect When You're Expecting? At this point, I was like, I look like this. I was like doubled over, holding my belly, and I was like, have you seen the movie What to Expect When You're Expecting? And they were like, yeah, it's been a while though. And I was like, I am not Brooklyn Decker. I'm Elizabeth Banks, and I think I'm dying. That's what I said to them. And they were like, you're not dying. Keep breathing. You got this. And they took me back to my suite. Because labor and delivery and post-delivery, post-op is like the same room. They don't move you, which is amazing. They have huge bathtubs. So they got me back to the room. They, I did not want to wear like any hospital. I wanted to stay in my clothes as much as I could, but I wanted my bottoms to just like be off. And eventually I ended up naked, and I just like labored butt freaking naked. And it's amazing how much you do not care about any of that when you're going through this. So, so anyway, I took everything but my top off, and they did a check, and I was still I was like 2.5 centimeters. So I had been laboring for like an hour and hadn't moved anywhere. So then I said, I need to get in the tub. And they asked me, do you want an epidural? And I said, yes. I said, if I'm still at 2 centimeters, I want an epidural, yes. But not right now. I don't want one now, but I'm going to want one. So they started an IV before I got in the tub to do fluids, because when you get an epidural, you have to get fluids because your blood pressure can drop. So they have to give you at least 1 liter of fluids before you can get an epidural. So they started drawing me a tub, set the IV, set up the fluids. I got in the tub, and I labored in the tub for 2 hours. That was, Tim says he has PTSD from that bathroom and that bathtub, and after, we were still in the same room, and he didn't want to go in that bathroom after we had her, because he said it was, I mean, I know how insane it was. I remember I screamed. I mean, I was like, I wasn't just like, I full on screamed at least 3 times, because it is intense, you guys. It was so intense. She was a +2 station when I got there, which, you guys, that is literally like +5 is what you're trying to get to push. So I was at 2 centimeters with a baby that was a +2. So my entire labor felt like, the whole labor felt like she was gonna come out at any second, out my butt, which I know is what they tell you it feels like. You're gonna have a big poop. But it seriously felt like she was just gonna come out my butt at any freaking minute. And it hurt so bad. I had that pressure because she was so low. And they kept telling, all the nurses that kept walking in, because I was laboring in the tub, and I just remember I kept saying, like, my butt, it literally hurt so bad. There in my back, and my hips, and my abdomen. I was in like excruciating pain. Excruciating pain. It felt like things were being ripped apart. And and my contractions were about a minute apart. I was getting no break. I had barely had enough time to take like 3 breaths, and then the next contraction would come. So I got out of the tub after an hour. It was a little shy of 2 hours. It was like an hour and a half I got out of the tub, and I was almost at 5 centimeters. And so I said, get the epidural in now, because I knew my body was progressing really, really quickly, which they had anticipated happening because my baby was so low. So when she's putting so much pressure, it forces you to dilate faster a lot of times. My midwife had told me that. And so anyway, so I said, I want the epidural now before it wouldn't be effective, because I cannot do this for like, I can't even do this for another hour. Like, I need that now. And so the epidural guy came so fast, like within 10 minutes of me requesting it, he was in the room. And they said it's the fastest epidural they've ever seen placed in their life. He placed it in about 30 seconds. It was perfect, and it took about an hour for it to kick in. So I was having some really bad contractions still for another hour until about 9 a.m. So now we're about 5 hours or 4 hours in of labor. I did about 4 hours of active labor by myself, and then the epidural took over. And it was, honestly, it was a complete game changer. It was a complete game changer for me. From somebody that really wanted to do a natural birth, the one thing that I was not open to doing was any kind of IV narcotic. So they didn't even offer that. It was part of my birth plan. IV narcotics, I've talked about it before. They don't always do this, but they can lead, because IV narcotics like can make you sluggish and kind of high feeling. They have the same effect on the baby, and it can lead to difficulties in breastfeeding. And because babies can be born a little bit more tired. And so I was not interested in doing IV narcotics at all, or nitrous. The only thing I was open to was an epidural if the pain was really bad, depending on how my body handled it. So I got the epidural placed. I flinched a lot. I've got really bad points in my back that like literally if you touch them, and at the end of pregnancy my back was so tight that like even Toby would touch his nose against my back and my whole back would just like seize up. I was getting weekly massages at the end of pregnancy, but it wasn't helping like that. I mean, they were helping with like my sciatica and things like that, but all these knots were just still so bad. So I flinched a lot, and he said it was fine. He was like, you can flinch as much as you want. I'm going to place this epidural exactly where it's going to need to go. He was so great, did it so fast, was out of there. They put the catheter in, which you have to have with an epidural because your legs go numb, everything numb like below your belly so that you can't feel the contractions, and so you obviously can't control your pee. So you have to have a catheter, which they do after they put the epidural in, so you don't feel the catheter. I didn't even feel the epidural, you guys. My back just seized because it felt like a prick, but it didn't hurt. It wasn't painful. I was having a contraction during it. I mean, you're so focused on like a bajillion things. There's just so many things going on, you just don't care. I was like in so much pain that I was like, put it in my back right now. I do not care. I got a little scared right when he came in. I wanted him to tell me when he was doing it, but I was just like, this has to happen now. So I got the epidural, and it was just a total game changer, and it's more power to people who do natural births. And I know that labor and delivery is different for every single person, and some people, contractions, I have a friend that literally birth doesn't feel painful to her. It just feels like pressure. Labor isn't painful, but for me it was really horrible, really, really horrible. And I am very thankful that I was able to get the epidural. So I got it. I didn't really sleep, but I was able to just rest like the rest of the day. So she came in an hour after he placed the epidural, and I was already at 7 centimeters. And then they really let my body go for like the next 3 hours. I think they waited 3 or 4 hours to check me, because they said the only thing that, unless I had the intense urge to push, then she would have come back in. But she's like, I'm just kind of going to let your body do its thing. You might be at 10 centimeters before, but it'll give the baby time to drop down further and be more engaged and, you know, be just really ready to push. So she comes back in about 3 or 4 hours later. This is about 2:30 in the afternoon, and she checks me, or about 2:15, and I'm 10 centimeters. And she says, we're gonna push the baby out. So I started pushing her out around 2:30. I pushed for an hour and a half. At around 2, I started to get a hot spot in my epidural, so my left hip flexor and hip and my left leg could feel everything that was happening, and it felt like someone was sawing my leg off. I'm not gonna lie. It felt like someone had a saw and was sawing my leg off every single time I pushed. I did 4 pushes every contraction because my third push always felt like
crap, to be honest, and my fourth one was always really good. So we settled on doing 4 pushes, every contraction, and I did that for an hour and a half. And yes, it was exhausting. I feel like pushing took me a little while to get the hang of because my legs were numb. Holding them wasn't like super comfortable. They felt really heavy. Holding my neck up, like my husband started, he was holding it up, but I didn't realize he needed to like until halfway through. So my neck was just so tired, and pushing was really hard. It's a totally different feeling than labor and active labor, but it's really hard, very challenging, and I was definitely really not wanting to push for that long. She started crying a little, so I went to get her. Hi, sweet girl. I love you. Hi. So anyway, I did not want to be pushing for an hour and a half. After an hour of pushing, I remember I really, like that last half an hour, I kept saying, we have to get her out. We have to get her out. I was in so much pain. I was gagging after every series of pushes because my left leg hurt so bad. I mean, it felt like someone was sawing it off and lighting it on fire at the same time. And it was like so bad I was going to throw up. But the actual, like the head, I could feel what was progression, like the progression of the pushes, which was kind of amazing. So the epidural doesn't numb you to the, it numbs your legs and everything from the pain, but it doesn't numb you to like the pressure and the pushing. You can still feel all that, which is amazing and essential for pushing. So I was really like grateful for that, and I could feel all of it. So I could feel when my pushes were progressing things, which was really, really, really cool. And my midwife, you guys, was unbelievable, which if I didn't already say this, how this all worked out, my midwife, my head midwife this entire pregnancy, was the one that got to deliver this baby. It's honestly incredible, and I could cry right now thinking about it because there are 18 midwives. The chances that she would get to deliver this baby are insane, and even just the fact that I had gestational hypertension, she was on call on Sunday. She was going to get to start the induction but probably not deliver the baby, and then she came on her own, and I was only in labor for 11 hours. Like, it's just absolutely crazy. So obviously we didn't need to be induced. I feel like I didn't need to say that because my water broke. But so Karen was there. The nurses were amazing. And I finally, like with a half an hour left for pushing, I was like, Tim, you need to put Sia Unstoppable on repeat. That was like my pump up for labor song. Like when I would think about going into labor and like doing this thing, like I would listen to that song. And so he put it on repeat. And we kept going, we kept pushing, and Karen really made me do the work. My midwife, she really could have assisted probably more, they said, but I'm going to tell you why I'm so glad that she didn't. And she made me do all the work of pushing this little one out. So I could feel, before I started pushing, I could feel her head. So she showed Tim the head, and then I could feel it. Like even, it was like her head was like this far from coming out. It was crazy. So she'd been in there for a while, and they said she was super tolerant of how long I was pushing and how long her head was in there. So anyway, okay, what happened now? Okay, so he put Sia Unstoppable on repeat, and all the nurses were like, "You're unstoppable!" Like they were amazing. They were so great. And Karen would, you know, she was telling me when to push, and I could feel the contractions coming. I didn't have to have them tell me when they were coming. I could feel them coming, which was awesome. So that I knew when I needed to push. And so I pushed the last half an hour with Sia Unstoppable on repeat, and the sun was setting, and so this sweet girl whose head is like crowning, we're in a room where we can see the sun setting, and there's one stream of light in the entire room, and it's on her head the entire birth, which her name means bringer of light. If you guys did not see my video about her name and introducing her yesterday, her name means bringer of light. There was one stream of light coming in through the window, and it was directly on her head and nowhere else. And Karen, the nurses, like everybody was just like, this is unbelievable. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like Tim was like amazed and totally mesmerized by it. Sia Unstoppable was going on repeat. And after the next 30 minutes at 3:59 p.m., which is funny because my midwife was like, when I was really having it rough, like when I was pushing and I was really wanting to be done and get her out, my midwife was like, we'll have this baby by 4 p.m. And so she was born at 3:59 p.m. At 3:59, you waited until the last minute. And she came out, and they put her on me, and I cried, and she grabbed onto Tim's finger right away, who was right there, and my whole world changed. It was unbelievable, and it just was the most magical moment of my entire life. I have never been more in shock that I did something. I remember crying remember crying and just like thinking, I can't believe I did that. I did it. Like, I knew I was gonna have to do it, but I actually did it because it feels really hard when you're doing it. It felt really, really hard. It did not feel easy. It felt like the hardest thing I've ever done in my whole life, and I could not, it took me like 2 days to be out of shock of like, I did that and I pushed her out. It was absolutely unbelievable to me. I felt really empowered. I felt really unstoppable and just amazing for doing it. And then when I saw her, I couldn't believe how amazing she was. I couldn't believe that she was the tiny human that everyone tells you, you know, you're gonna push out. Like, she's gonna be a tiny human, and you'll see her and say, that's exactly what she's gonna look like. And it's so true. And it just was the most, like, the most incredible moment of my entire life. And I will never, ever, ever, ever forget it. Ever. And the whole first week being home with her, I cried every day. You smiling? I cried every day starting around 2:30 or 3. And I just would think about that hour of pushing her out. Remember what that felt like. And tell her, I was just telling her about it, her birth story. I told her it, I think every day for 4 or 5 days. I still just felt like I was processing all of it. And just kind of, I would just like go through it again in a really beautiful way. Like, it was, you know, like painful and all that the first time, but it was so beautiful and magical. And I just felt like every day I just like, it just felt so special, and I just never wanted to forget it. And so right around that time, every day, I just couldn't stop remembering it and telling her about it. And, yeah, I'll just never forget it. I can't believe it's been 2 weeks. It's just crazy. It's absolutely incredible what our bodies can do. Incredible. And I couldn't believe that I had done it. I really couldn't. The one small complication that I had was that my placenta, my afterbirth, did not deliver. They waited about 35 minutes, and then they called the OB on call, which, if you guys follow my previous videos, the OB that we initially saw that we were going to go with, we left and went to the midwife practice. And then the OB on call that had to come in was the OB that we had seen and then left at 16 weeks pregnant when we switched practices, which was insanely full circle. And really, we couldn't believe that she was there. So she actually had... Hi, sweet girl. Unfortunately, my placenta was partially detached and just wouldn't come out. They kind of massaged it a little. They tried to help it along, and it wouldn't come out. And so she had to manually deliver it, which was pretty painful. I just will be honest with you guys. She reaches all the way up in there to your uterus to take out the placenta. And I thought she was going to come out with my heart. And so after having just pushed a baby out, you know, I had her on my chest, and so thank goodness for that, and all the oxytocin and the endorphins and just everything that was going, and adrenaline and all the happiness with this little one. Because if I didn't have her and she had to do that, it would have really been a lot more horrible. But they got it out, and it was fully intact. They had to send it to the lab to make sure that there was nothing left in there, since they had to manually deliver it. But there wasn't, and everything came back totally fine and normal and great. And so that was the only like slight complication. They had tried giving me Pitocin and all of that, and it just like didn't work. Nothing worked to deliver it. So so they did manually remove it, and then and Tim cut her cord. Oh yes, your daddy cut. Look at this sad face, little pout. Her daddy cut her cord and watched the whole birth, which he originally wasn't going to do, but he said it was just the coolest thing he's ever seen. And magically, like I said, the birth story is kind of like magical and incredible. Finally, after the placenta was delivered, I said to Karen, I said, how bad is it down there? And she was like, I don't look till after the placenta is born, usually, like check everything. So she went down and looked, and I had 0 tearing anywhere, no tearing. And that's why I said, like the nurses, everybody, Karen could have assisted a little bit more when I was pushing, like to help kind of pull, but she really let me do it all on my own, which stretched out my perineum, and And it doesn't always work like this, and she said that. She said, you know, it's not just because of that you didn't tear. We have no way of knowing who will tear and who won't. But I had 0 tears, besides some swelling down there, and I didn't even really lose blood. I lost, like she said, it was like the most minimal amount of blood she's ever seen in a birth lost, and I really didn't have any bleeding afterwards. Very, very, very minimal, like a period, and I'm 2 weeks postpartum, and I haven't really had bleeding for the last 5 days. And I feel very normal down there and everywhere. The one thing that, because I had the manual removal of the placenta, I did have really horrible contracting. Obviously, when she latched and started breastfeeding and was doing amazing right away, and my milk came in fully on day 3, like the night of day 2 into day 3, and it was like I got really engorged, and I mean, was really grateful. I had so much colostrum right away for her. She ate like a champ. We've never had a latch problem. Like, breastfeeding's been going amazingly well, and I can do a whole separate video on that. Which I'm really grateful for, because I know so many people struggle with all different kinds of breastfeeding, and it was something I was nervous about and prepared for it to be super hard, but it's really never been painful for me. My nipples haven't been like bleeding or cracked, or you know, we've never had any of those issues so far, and it's all gone really well. So but besides, so I had some swelling down there. I had a lot of really bad contractions when she would breastfeed. It was like horrible pain, like back to the kind of active labor contraction pain. So I was on a lot of Tylenol and ibuprofen, but they didn't give me anything stronger than that. And it just wasn't even touching the pain. So I did experience the first 48 hours just so much pain from my uterus just was trying to bounce back like immediately. Like, by the time I left the hospital, I barely had a belly. They said that it was trying to snap back really fast, like faster than normal, which was why I was in so much pain, they said, or, you know, they thought, plus the placenta removal and all of that. But all that, I feel like I've talked a lot about the pain, but hopefully you guys have also seen or heard or understood that this was like the most magical day and experience of my entire life. I think it went perfectly how it was supposed to, and I'm really grateful for every single part of it. The pain, the pushing, the epidural, putting her on my chest. I mean, there's just nothing like it in the whole world, and it was just the most magical birth story, magical thing ever in the whole world. And we love her so much, and really grateful that she's here and that she made her appearance on her own without needing the induction. And it was 11 hours of labor, 5 a.m. to 3:59 p.m. and it was really beautiful. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this birth story. Obviously, everybody's birth stories are different, so I'm not saying that yours will be like this. They're literally all very different. I've never heard a birth story that's the same as somebody else's ever in my life. So this was my experience with it, and I hope that you enjoyed just hearing about it. So our little bringer of light from the strong place, Aila Carol O'Keefe, came into this world on December 9th at 3:59 p.m. And it was amazing. So thank you guys for watching. I love you all so much. I'm gonna go take this girly inside and get some good snuggles, and I will see you all in my next one. Mwah.